In this video, we will talk about the SafeNet authentication service agents for remote desktop, web access, and gateway. So typically we have a client that will access the RD web access. It connects to the connection broker to deliver applications from the session host and virtualization host. So we're going to look at what is the user experience by default using single factor of authentication. The user accesses web page, enter the Active Directory username and password, click on sign in, you see the resources available to you, you click on the one I configured here, which is VDI, and you get an RDP connection to that VM. So that's the default user experience. What we want to do first is to enable two-factor authentication to access this web page to protect the resources. So Gemalto offers an agent for remote desktop web access, which you can install on the web access server. So you run through the installer and you'll get a tool to configure everything, to connect to SAS for the second factor authentication. So we're going to enable this agent. You can configure the authentication user experience here. You can configure which groups are required and not required to provide two-factor authentication. Then you need to specify where is your SAS server. In this case, we will point to the SAS cloud. But it could be an on-premise SAS server as well. So once it's configured, you can test that the connection to the server is okay, and you can also provide some actual user credentials to verify that they are verified as expected. So I enter username and a one-time password, click on test, and I get authentication succeeded, so it means that we're good to go, and we can have two-factor authentication now on web access. So there's a new field now here. So I enter the username, the Active Directory password, and a one-time password in the new field as second factor authentication. After that, the user experience is pretty much the same. You get a list of resources available. You can click on it and access it through RDP. Alright, so we have access to our VDI environment. Now, all we've done is to add second factor authentication on this web page. So there is actually a trick that consists of finding the RDP file in your temp folder. So we're going to try that. Going to the temp folder, and here you'll find the RDP file. You can double click on it, and as you can see, this file can be reused, and the user can access his video environment again without any additional authentication. And that's because it's still logged on the web access. So if we sign out and try again, this time it will ask for a single factor authentication, but basically what it means is that the user could keep using this file and bypass the second factor of authentication anytime he wants or she wants. So it's a security flaw, and we're going to patch that. So what we've done so far is that we installed the agent on the web access server, but the gateway has no knowledge of second factor authentication. So that's why we provide a second agent that uses the Microsoft pluggable authentication and authorization APIs, and that way we can secure two-factor authentication every time the user tries to access the corporate resources. So we are not going to show in this video all the steps required to configure this gateway agent, but basically you'll get a tool like this where you have to select a certificate and a configuration file, and the tool will modify the file as needed. So that tool has to be run on the gateway and the web access servers. Once you have that ready, you can refresh the web page. Nothing changes. The user experience is the same. You enter your Active Directory username, password, and the one-time password. Click on Login. You access your resources. And again, you have your access to your VDI. So the user experience is the same, but now we have secured this RDP file. And the RDP file is actually different because now it's being signed, and we can verify the signature and control. So this time you see you get an error message saying that you already basically used this file, so you cannot just go and click on it to access this resource again. Now a user could try to save this file before it's ever used and then move it on to a different computer or even pass it on to a different user. But we block that as well, right? So I'm moving to a different laptop, a Windows 7 laptop, and I will try to open this RDP file for the first time, but the Gemalto agent will block that because we don't recognize the IP and the user is coming from. That way you make sure that users must use two-factor authentication at all time.